Hello students. In the last lecture, we have started with the regulatory aspects in mergers and acquisition. We have already covered the introduction of the regulatory framework, and we have covered two legal aspects which govern M&A, that is Accounting Standards and AS 14 of ICAI and the Companies Act of 2013. Today we'll talk about the remaining four legal aspects or legal frameworks that guides or provide regulations for the M&A. These are the Competition Act of 2002, securities laws, laws relating to exchange control, and lastly, the tax laws. First of all, we'll talk about the Competition Act of 2002. So, the Competition Act is a legal framework, the purpose of which is to promote a healthy competition in the economy. So, in the interest of consumers, this act has been devised so that when there's a healthy competition in the economy, it will be able to give good price and a good product to the final customer. But before the existence of the Competition Act, another act was there in force which was called as the MRTP Act of 1969. So the Monopolies and Restrictive Trade Practices Act was formed in 1969 with the objective of controlling the formation of monopolies, prohibiting monopolistic and restrictive trade practices, and preventing any unfair trade practices. So there were threefold purposes of this act, that is to control the formation of monopolies. So that monopoly means when there's one single firm that is controlling the entire market share. So when there is a monopoly, then obviously all the prices or the supplies will be governed by that single monopoly firm, and it will be detrimental to the interest of the consumers, because consumers, they will have to buy the product at a price and at the quality which is provided by that monopoly firm. So this act was meant to control the formation of monopolies, prohibit any kind of restrictive trade practices, like any trade practice which is restrictive in terms of price or quantity or quality, and lastly, unfair trade practices. So thirdly, this act was meant to control any unfair trade policies which were made by the businesses to exploit the consumers. The complaint may be preferred by a consumer, trade or consumer association, or even the central government. So whenever a particular person, maybe a consumer or a district forum or a consumer association or even the central government, they have a complaint regarding any business, regarding the formation of monopolies or any unfair trade practices, they can get that complaint to the appropriate authority, and proper action was taken against the firm for violating the provisions of this act. Prior to 1991, MRTP also contained provisions regulating M&A. But in 1991, the MRP was amended and the provisions regarding M&A were deleted. So the MRTP Act was formed in 1969, and and it came into effect on 1970. So from 1970 to 1991, MRTP Act contains provisions regarding M&A as well. That what kind of M&A are there which are not allowed or which lead to formation of monopolies. But after 1991, the provisions regarding M&A were deleted from the MRTP Act. With the changing nature of competition laws, a need was felt for a change in the focus with emphasis on promoting competition rather than curbing monopolies. So, with passing time, the amount of the business and the volume of trade increased. So, with the increased amount of the business, there was a need of change of the focus. That means the focus should change from preventing monopolies to promoting competition. So, the people felt that rather than having a law which prevent monopolies, we should have a law which should promote competition. So when a competition is promoted, so obviously it provides good product, good quality product to the consumers at a good price. So as a result of the change in the focus, the Competition Act of 2002 was formed, which replaced the existing MRTP Act of 1969. The Competition Act takes a new look at the competition altogether and contains specific provisions on anti-competition agreements, abuse of dominance, mergers, amalgamations and takeovers, and competition advocacy. So this act was formed, and the purpose of this act was to promote competition in the economy. And how it meant to promote competition through threefold objectives. That is to make provisions on anti-competition agreements. That is, from time to time it keep on circulating those agreements which are anti-competitive and which are not allowed. Then abuse of dominance, like if there is one big firm and it has a huge market share, so that firm is in a dominant position of controlling the supply and the price of their product. So none of such firms should be in a position to have a misadvantage of their dominant position. And lastly, about the competition advocacy. In order to perform the purposes of the Act, the Competition Commission of India was formed, which is called as CCI. So, for the purposes of the Act, in order to perform the provisions of the Act, an organization was established, which is called as CCI. So, the purpose of CCI was to control any anti-competitive agreements, abuse of dominant position, and for regulating certain combinations. So, these are the threefold objectives of this Act or objectives of this organization. That is, to prevent anti-competitive agreements, then to prevent any abuse of dominant position, and last, to regulate certain combinations. So as I've told you in the previous slide also, the Competition Act contains provisions regarding three objectives. That is, anti-competitive agreements, abuse of dominant position, and regulation of combinations. Anti-competitive agreement means such kind of agreement between two or more firms that prohibits competition. Now, sometimes the firms may come together and make cartels. Cartels means the group of the firms. So they may come together and they decide that we will sell our particular product at this particular price. So in such manner, they are prohibiting the competition by controlling the price. So such kind of agreements or such kind of making cartels is not allowed under the Competition Act. So these are called as anti-competitive agreements. So the Act recognizes and identifies the agreements which are anti-competitive and against the interest of the consumers. The second provision is the abuse of dominant position. Now, sometimes there could be a very big organization which controls huge market share. Now, for example, Reliance Petrochemicals, they have a huge market share with regards to various petrochemicals. So, when they have huge market share, so obviously they are in a dominant position of controlling the supply of the product as well as the price of the product. So, such a big organization is in a position, is in a dominant position to have a control over the market and to take undue advantage of the same. So this act contains provisions so that none of the big organizations, they are in a position to have a misadvantage of their dominant position. So it controls certain activities of those big corporations so that they do not take undue advantage of the customers. Lastly is the regulation of combinations. So combination means mergers and acquisitions. So in this act, there are certain kind of M&A which are written, which are uh, against the healthy competition, and that these are usually any kind of vertical or horizontal mergers or acquisition, because such kind of M&A, they reduce the number of players in the market and increases the chances of formation of monopolies. So such combinations, they reduce the amount of competition in the market, and hence they are not allowed as per the Competition Act. Now the second legal framework which we'll talk about today is the securities laws. So security means any kind of share, debenture, whether it's equity share or preference share or any other kind of security which is issued by a company on the stock exchange. And such securities are subscribed by the public and they are purchased and sold amongst the general public. So these are called as securities. So such securities are listed on the stock exchange and they are bought and sold therefrom. Now, for the matter of the securities, two type of laws are there or legal frameworks are there which govern any transfer of securities or listing of the securities on the stock exchange. So, first type of regulation is the SEBI Substantial Acquisition of Shares and Takeovers Regulation Act of 2011, and second is the listing agreement. The first legal framework under security laws is the Securities and Exchange Board of India, that is SEBI, Substantial Acquisition of Shares and Takeover Regulations Act 2011. Now, SEBI is the nodal authority that regulates entities that are listed on the stock exchanges in India. So SEBI is the body which regulates those companies whose shares are listed on the stock exchange. So SEBI provides certain provisions with regards to certain disclosures or the forms which have to be fulfilled or what guidelines have to be fulfilled when the company is listed on the stock exchange. Now, in order to govern the transfer of securities in M&A, the SEBI regulations of 2011, which is also called as Takeover Code, has been made, which restricts and regulates the acquisition of the shares or control in the listed companies. So, whenever any public company, or we can say any listed company, enters into merger or acquisition with another company, now that company has to fulfill certain regulations and make certain disclosures with regards to the takeover code that is mentioned by SEBI. So when a company A acquires company B, so it has acquired company B by purchasing its shares from the stock market. So such kind of deal will be regulated by the takeover code of 2011. The takeover code will restrict and it will regulate the transfer of the shares from the one company to the another company. So when the shares which are listed on the stock exchange, they are transferred between one entity to the another entity due to M&A, then all these regulations or provisions, they are mentioned in the takeover code. The principal objectives of the takeover code are to provide the shareholders of a listed company with adequate information about the impending change in the control of the company, and also to provide them with a limited exit option. So what is the purpose that why this takeover code has been formed, which provide for disclosure of information regarding change in the control of the company or change in the shareholding of the company? Basically to inform the shareholders. So when the shareholders, they are informed that there's a change in the control of the company, there's a change in the management of the company, or there's a change in the ownership of the company. So it will help them in giving the information, and also they can make the decision that whether they want to retain their shareholding in the newly formed company or not. So the takeover code may contain provisions regarding pricing of the offer, that at what price the deal will be made, that if one company wants to acquire another company, then it is acquiring the another company by the way of purchasing its shares from the open market. So at what price they will buy the shares, then mode of payment of offer price, how the payment will be made, whether the payment will be made in shares or will be made in cash, then restrictions on the target company, like target company is a company which is being bought or which is being acquired. So when the such kind of deal takes place, there are some restrictions on the target company and on their shareholders also. Then next is bidding. So bidding means when you bid for a particular price. So what are the provisions regarding bidding? And lastly, the disclosures. That when such kind of M&A takes place, what disclosures have to be made to the stock exchange. Next legal framework under securities laws is listing agreement. So listing means when the shares of the company, they are registered and they're listed on the stock exchange, it is called as listing. So listing agreement is an agreement between the company and the stock exchange for the purpose of listing its shares on that particular stock exchange. So in that case, a number of disclosures have to be made, or a number of information has to be given to the stock exchange. So when a particular company is listed on the stock exchange and that company goes for any kind of M&A, then it has to file that scheme of M&A with the stock exchange at least 1 month prior to filing with the court. So if a particular company is listed on the stock exchange and in the future it wants to go for any kind of merger or acquisition, then it has to inform the stock exchange by filing the scheme of merger with the stock exchange. That scheme cannot violate or override the provisions of any security law or stock exchange requirements. Now, whatever scheme of merger you are proposing, that scheme should not be against any Companies Act or any kind of the takeover code. Then lastly, the pre and the post merger shareholding must also be disclosed to the shareholders. So lastly, so when the merger and acquisition takes place, the pattern of shareholding change, the owners change, the management change. So this changed ownership and management has to be disclosed to the stock exchange as well. So both pre as well as post shareholding, that means who were the shareholders before the merger and who were the shareholders after the merger, this information has to be disclosed to the stock exchange on which the securities are listed. Now, the third legal framework which we will talk about today is the laws relating to exchange control. So, exchange control means when the control is exchanged in between two companies. So, it basically includes rules regarding FDI and ODI. FDI means foreign direct investment and ODI means overseas direct investment. So when we talk about FDI, that is usually when the foreign companies they come into India and make investment into different industrial sectors in India. And ODI means when Indian companies go abroad and make investment there. So there are certain rules and regulations with regards to FDI and ODI. Though significant controls have been removed and foreign companies they can freely acquire Indian companies across most sectors, these are subject to pricing and reporting requirements imposed by the RBI. Basically, by now, almost all the sectors they have been allowed with 100% FDI. That means a foreign company they can come and make 100% investment in any particular sector and form a company in India. But they are subject to a number of requirements with regards to pricing, that if a foreign company for example comes to India, they must have to use the raw materials of Indian origin, or they must give employment to Indian people. So there are some strict regulations which these companies have to follow, and they also have to make certain disclosures which are imposed on them by RBI. Investments in and acquisitions of Indian companies for foreign entities are governed by the terms of FDI policy and the industrial policy given by Secretariat for Industrial Assistance in the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. So, how much percentage of FDI is allowed, and what are rules and regulations, and what are provisions regarding pricing or disclosures, everything is mentioned in the FDI policy, which is released almost every year. So the FDI policy specifies that what sectors allow how much percentage of FDI and what are rules and regulations or conditions for the foreign companies who enter into that sector and make investment in India. Now FDI can be done through three routes. Like if FDI is entered into India, is allowed in India, there are three routes for the same: automatic route, government route, and automatic and government route. So automatic route means that route in which the permission of the government is not required. So under an automatic route, the Indian company does not require to have any approval from the government for the investment. But under government route, prior to the investment, an approval of the government is required. But basically, almost all the FDI investments they are under the automatic route. But there are some of the investments which are of matter of interest for the country. For them, government route is adopted. And lastly, third route is government and automatic, which is a combination of both. In order to have a details regarding which sector is under automatic route and which under government route, you can follow this link. Then ODI. ODI means overseas direct investment. When an Indian company wishes to go abroad and make an investment in a foreign company, or it wants to acquire the foreign company, it has to comply with the ODI regulations. So by FDI means when a foreign company comes into India and make an M&A or investment in the Indian company, or overseas direct investment means when an Indian company goes abroad and make investment or M&A in with the foreign company. The last laws pertains to the tax laws. So the tax laws they are basically governed by the Income Tax Act of 1961. So Income Tax Act of 1961 make provisions regarding amalgamations. Like amalgamation means amalgamation in the nature of merger and in the nature of purchase. So amalgamation includes both M&A. So we have already talked about the various tax aspects of M&A in the previous chapters. Then what tax will be imposed on the long-term and short-term capital gains? Like if the company has sold its shareholding to another company, then it has incurred some of the capital gains. Or if the shareholders have sold their shares to the target to the bidding company, they also have earned some of the capital gains. So what is the tax on these short-term and long-term capital gains on the transferee company as on the shareholders of the transferee company? Lastly, it makes provisions regarding tax on business income, which includes carry forward of losses. So carry forward of losses means that if company A has, for example, acquired company B, and company B was running into losses from the last 2 years. So now the benefit of those losses can be given to the acquirer as well. That is, the acquirer can be able to carry forward and set off the losses of the acquired company in against their profits. So what are the provisions regarding the same? We have already discussed in the tax aspects of M&A. So this was about the 6 types of legal framework that govern that provide guidelines for any kind of M&A. So by now we are done with our syllabus. and any doubts and queries are welcome through WhatsApp or email.